What's going on, guys? Jacob at Jaegers. Today we're taking apart our Tippmann Cronus valve and going over how to repair it. If you watched our Tippmann Cronus disassembly video, which we'll link that down below, this is where we left off. We had everything taken apart and the valve just sitting in the Cronus body. Today we're going to go over actually taking the valve apart and how to replace all the seals in it in case you have a leak. Tools you're going to need are either a 7/16 wrench or an adjustable wrench. Either one will be fine. The hex key that came with your Cronus. We're actually going to use the barrel adapter from your Cronus and the trigger linkage arm as some tools for this. And you'll need a dental pick that's got a fairly sharp, kind of flat end on it, or some sort of pick tool. As well as getting in here, tool-wise, you're also going to need some parts. Replacement valve O-rings, and possibly a replacement plunger. Hopefully you don't need that, and we'll go over that in more detail once we get in there. The last thing that's optional is going to be a Tippmann snap ring. We'll give you the part number when we get to that point, and a set of snap ring pliers to install that. Makes everything a lot easier at the end, but it is optional. All right, the first thing we've got to do is remove the nut from the bottom of the valve, or the gas line adapter. If you have an old 98, this is where the hose thread's in. It'll be the same thing. Newer 98s just have a compression fitting, so when you take it apart, you don't have to undo that nut. It's one step less. But on old 98s in the Cronus, we have to remove that. You'll need some Teflon tape for reinstalling that as well at the end. Take your whole valve assembly, give it a couple taps on the edge of a surface, and that's going to let the stem stick out and the rest of it come flush with the base. At this point, where that nut was, you're going to take that trigger linkage arm, tuck it behind there, and use it as a tool just to wedge the valve out. Set your power tube aside. And this is where we're going to use the barrel adapter. Pin side down in the barrel adapter. Going to keep that trigger linkage arm and your big hex key. Be careful when doing this. You don't want everything to topple and hit your hands on the countertop. You're going to push down on the big brass piece on the back. And on the inside here, you're going to see that go past the opening. At which point you will tuck the trigger linkage arm in to hold that in place. And we're ready to do the fun part now. Once you've got the valve in this state, this is the difficult part where you have to remove the retention ring in here. You're going to use a nice kind of flat and sharp dental pick if you have one handy. I don't know if that's going to be in focus, but you'll get the idea. And you can see where this ring starts. There's kind of a lip. And this might take a few tries, so bear with me. But we're going to tuck that behind the snap ring and kind of lift it out. Oh my goodness. First try. That never happens. We're going to use this to run it all the way around. This normally takes about a dozen attempts, so do not give up and get frustrated. Once you walk that around, that ring's going to pop right out. Set all that aside. Put that side of the valve face down while you pull this arm out. Otherwise, the spring pinch is going to launch these pieces out at your face, and that's never good. We're going to use this trigger linkage arm one more time to pop out the back plug to your valve. At this point, you can tap out, or they just fall out if you're lucky. You got your plunger, your valve spring, that end plug, and there's still one more seal in here to get out. You'll need your pick. You can go in from the front, kind of, and deep inside there's a brass ring with an O-ring around it. We're going to just kind of slide that guy out, and the ring stayed in, so we're going to reach in and pull that ring out. All right, that is everything. So if your Cronus is leaking, there's only 3 seals that can cause that. Either the O-ring that was down inside there, it sits around this valve seal, the one on your plug, or you've got your actual plunger seal there. And the way these fit together inside there is like that. So as long as you're taking this apart, you might as well replace the O-rings. Either Tippmann valve O-rings or just size 0, 1, 2, or 12 paintball valve or standard O-rings will work for this. you've gone through all the effort to take it apart this far, you might as well just replace those if you have them handy. They're usually what needs replaced anyway, on the rare occasion that you have a valve leak. The other reason you might have a leak is this valve seal has a little brass lip on it. If that's got any dings in it, then your plunger can't seal on it. Or if your plunger, the rubber seal in that, has any debris or dings in it, it likewise won't seal on this. So if those are dinged up, you might need a replacement valve surface or a replacement plunger. Now, if you have a vise and some grips, you can actually take the plunger apart and flip this washer in here, this rubber washer over. I've got one I did ahead of time for you guys. You just unthread it, and again, you have to put this in the vise and use some pliers. It's pretty tough. And then normally, the plunger bit, the sealing bit, stays in here. You have to kind of pry it out. Don't mar it up when you pry it out, otherwise you're going to be out of luck. But you can take that out, and if it's dinged up, flip it over, thread this back together, and reassemble your plunger with a new sealing face on the outside. Or just buy a new plunger, just whatever's easiest for you guys. Once you've done all that, you'll need a couple drops of oil, and we're going to reassemble this. So the O-ring side goes first with the plunger behind it. Just kind of get those started in there. You can use the spring to push them all the way in. Your plug goes in the back, and we're going to repeat what we did in reverse. Seat this down, tuck that in there to hold it. And now is where putting this back in is almost as tough as taking it out. It's kind of a pain. Okay, so we got the whole valve back together, and then realized that at some point the camera had stopped recording. So we're picking up where we left off. Going to give this another shot, and hopefully it goes a little smoother this time. You know, take your snap ring, get the edge of it started with your nail, kind of like that, and then set that into the groove. And once you've got that started, kind of hold it in place. You're going to take the pick and work it in around the edges. And so what I'm doing is I'm applying a sideways force, so that lip we've already started, it's going to sit in there and not pop out. And as I'm applying a sideways force, I'm going to take the pick and work my way around. Just keep kind of putting a slight sideways force on this whole ring to keep it in the groove. And once you get about halfway, it gets a lot easier. Just don't let go, otherwise it will pop out and you have to start all the way over. All right. There we go. Now you can pull this little trigger linkage arm out. That plunger's gonna pop up. If it gets hung up on the O-ring right there, just use your pick or tool and kind of help give it a little push towards the back so it's seated. There it is. That'll pop up all the way to the end. All we have to do now is put this back in the power tube. So the pin, that has to be sticking out the big hole side. Don't put that into that way, otherwise it's not fun to get back out. And the threaded hole has to be lined up with the biggest hole on the side of it. So line those up, slide it together. And if you go too far in or a little bit off to one side or the other, you just kind of reach in there with your pick and make sure that this is all centered up. If it's really far off, what you can do is actually tap it all the way back out and try again. But usually with a little force, you can swivel it into position so it's centered. You need to put some Teflon tape around the threads of the hardline adapter. And then take that wrench or the adjustable wrench, whichever one you have, tighten that down until it's snug. Once it stops, give it just a tiny bit extra because you do have a high pressure seal going on there. And now it's ready to put back in the Cronus and reassemble just like in our Cronus video. Thank you again, guys.